Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, back from a week-long vacation in the mountains of Utah. Had a great time with my family, got to see some friends from adjacent states, Montana and Wyoming, and a couple of friends from the state of Utah that I hadn't seen in a great many years. It's always good to be able to travel to other states in the Union, specifically here in the Pacific or the northwestern part of the country, and just see how beautiful the United States of America is, and Utah is no exception. Well, I hope that many of you out there have survived Hurricane Hillary. She came blowing into town on Sunday. I guess more wetness than blow. And so we didn't get a hurricane as such, but we did get a tropical storm. And of course, there were conspiracies just flying around here and there about this particular tropical storm. I know that here in Southern California, we don't obviously get tropical storms very often, but we have had some. 1939 is one that in particular happened here in Southern California. We had a couple in the 1970s, and I think one or two maybe in the 1980s. But we do go through cyclical cycles in terms of the weather, and because we are, originally part of Mexico, some of those hurricanes do travel up the state, but when they hit our Pacific waters here off our coast, which are much colder than down there in the Baja area, they tend to lose their steam and become tropical storms. But we got over 6 inches here in Santa Clarita, over 4 inches up in Acton, which is unheard of for our area. And we were just talking to some of the board operators here before the program. I guess the Coachella Valley down in the Palm Springs area got a huge amount of rain. Mount San Jacinto, which looks condescendingly over the Coachella Valley, got well over 11 inches of rain, and Palm Springs itself was pretty much flooded. So I do hope that everything went well for you guys out there. For the most part, for many of us here in Southern California, it was just a nice, consistent, steady, ongoing rain. At the bottom of the hour, we have in studio with us the Italian stallion himself, Joe Messina, who is on the Hart School Board District, and we will be talking to him about some back-to-school things and if you will, school board etiquette, especially as school board meetings are going to start kicking back into gear here. And so we'll talk a little bit about that with Joe Messina at the bottom of the hour. If I could give a quick shameless plug, September 10th, that's just a few weeks away here, at Freedom's Way Baptist Church, which is, of course, the church that I pastor. Former State Senator Mike Morrell will be with us. He is the author of a book, The Road to Recovering the Family. He'll be bringing that book with him, and of course, people can purchase that book for a nominal fee. But he will be speaking at the Freedom's Way Baptist Church at 10:30 a.m. on September 10th. So encourage you to come out. You can check that out on our website, freedomswaybaptistchurch.org, or on our Facebook, Freedom's Way Baptist Church, or on my Facebook, Jerry Cook. And encourage you to give a like to any of those things, or to check out our YouTube page, Freedom's Way Baptist Church YouTube, and check some of our sermons out as well. Well, what I wanted to deal with for the next few minutes here before the Italian Stallion comes in and we talk about school things, I wanted to kind of answer this question, or at least attempt to answer this question. Why is our political dialogue so divided in our country today? I'm sure you've probably heard this question answered by way of Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or any other particular right-wing individual that you happen to listen to or like. But maybe you haven't heard that question dissected from somebody like myself who happens to be a pastor of a Bible-believing church. And even as a pastor who happens to think that politics is a non-physical, non-contact sport, I have even noticed that our political dialogue today has really, truly divided our country. And we have gone from simply disagreeing in times past, then those two people that disagreed would share a meal together, But now it's like you stay on your side of the fence and I'll stay on mine. Or for that matter, you shouldn't even have a place to stay because your political positions are just that repugnant to me. It seems today that civility is gone and incivility is all the rage. But the question is, for how long can that type of incivility really be sustained for a long period of time? I believe that our deep political divisions in our country is not because politics is amoral, that is, having no moral standard, neither right nor wrong, but rather, I believe, because politics is moral and is undergirded in a deep-seated morality. And I believe that that deep-seated morality is predominantly on one side, but it's frankly on both sides. And I would contend more specifically that it's a deep-seated biblical morality. If you will, our political disagreements stem largely from doctrinal and theological disagreements. Now you're saying, well, wait a minute. One side doesn't even believe the Bible. They don't even believe in morality. They don't believe in the standards that Bible Christians do. How can I say that our political disagreements stem largely from doctrinal and theological disagreements? Think about it this way. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself an atheist, agnostic, or a woke Christian. You have a set of principles that you abide to and that you abide by. You will fight tooth and nail to defend it, even if it's completely obtuse and makes absolutely no sense. So the fact is, whether you're on the right side of this argument or on the left side of this argument, these political disagreements that we have in our country that has caused so much division over the course of the last several years stem largely from doctrinal and theological disagreements. I want you to consider this article written by my acquaintance and fellow laborer in Christ, Jared Longshore, who actually co-pastors Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. He wrote an article on his blog, posted in Mere Christendom, that says this: as of late, it is like we are caught in a cosmic makeover show in the Reformed and evangelical world. Donald J. Trump was the material cause, maybe, but he was not the originating cause. And here's the quote I want to consider. We are dealing with political disagreements that stem from doctrinal disagreements. But, here's the kicker, we didn't see the doctrinal differences until the political revealed them. Thus, we're all befuddled and scratching our heads. And if you want to read the entirety of this article, which I would suggest you do, it was posted yesterday, August 22nd. And again, it's by Jared Longshore, and you can check him out on Facebook or just go to Mere Christendom on Facebook and check out that blog. So, what Jared says here is what Trump did was merely open the wounds by showing both sides the morality and immorality of their respective positions. Think about this, folks. The Republican candidates that we had prior to Donald Trump in 2016 were your average country club Republican that didn't really want to open any wounds either on the right or on the left. They just kind of wanted to be right in the middle, the mushy middle, and not make any inroads either way. Now, that's not to say that we haven't had some exceptions to that rule. Obviously, the great Ronald Reagan won 2 terms in the 1980s, won a sizable battle against Jimmy Carter in 1980, and of course in 1984 won 49 out of 50 states. So there are some exceptions, and Richard Nixon would be another in 1972 against, I forget his name right now, but that was a 49-state win as well. But what Trump did was merely open the wounds by showing both sides the morality or immorality of their respective positions. The title of this program that you're listening to is called Politics and the Pulpit because, as a pastor and a Bible believer, I cannot, in good conscience, separate Bible truth from politics any more than I could separate Henry Ford from the internal combustion engine. Both sides, whether you're on the right or on the left, are arguing for a viewpoint and a worldview that are contrary one to another. A few months ago on Easter Sunday, I preached a sermon where I said this statement: the Bible is the worldview. There are only two opposing worldviews, folks. There's the biblical worldview and the naturalistic worldview. There are only two worldviews. There are not many. You know, people will say, what's your worldview? Well, it's only one of two. You either are going to have a biblical worldview or you're going to have a naturalistic evolutionary worldview. Those are the only two worldviews you can have. And again, I would contend that our political disagreements mainly stem from doctrinal and theological disagreements. Whether wittingly or unwittingly, they just do. I'm not concerned whether the right understands that or the left understands that. I'm telling you as a pastor, I understand that our political disagreements mainly stem from doctrinal and theological disagreements via the Word of God. Now, you say, what are some examples of that? Well, let's consider a few biblical issues that have been hijacked into the political realm and have mainly been seen as political issues, but in reality are moral biblical issues that have just been hijacked by the political right and the political left. The first is abortion. This is a no-brainer, folks. To me, this is not a gray area. This is a black or a white issue. Life either begins in the womb or it doesn't. That is, either a child is in that womb and it's growing and has a heartbeat and has 5 digits and 5 toes and has lungs and all that kind of stuff. Either a child is in that womb or it's a worthless bunch of goo that is a foreign invader in the womb that must be extracted in such a manner that would make most saw traps look like juvenile. I mean, think about this. I said a minute ago there were only two worldviews. There was either the biblical worldview or the naturalistic evolutionary worldview. The evolutionists will tell you that the earth is somewhere between 4.1 and 4.6 billion years old. Now, I disagree with that, but how in the world can they know that the earth is that old, but yet they can't figure out whether a child between conception and 9 months is an actual child, a human? Give me a break. I think if we're able to split the atom, I think we can determine beyond reasonable doubt that what is in a woman's womb is a child. Number two, how about male and female issues, which has seemed to be at the forefront of everybody's thinking in the last couple of years? Is gender something you are born with? In other words, the binary creation of male and female, which is Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, or is gender something you are assigned at birth? I mean, that you never, ever thought about this stuff 4 or 5 years ago. And I can already hear the arguments, well, when slavery was happening, we could never see the end of it because that was just the normal. Now listen, slavery has always been sinful. Slavery has always been wrong. And I know that America, by the way, wasn't the only one that was committing that moral sin, but it was a universal sin all around the world. In fact, it's happening right now. We've come a long way here in the United States of America, and some of you would do good and do well if you'd give us some credit. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to this male and female issue, we have a party in this country that in the 1990s and early 2000s was touting that they were the party of the woman and the party of the children, and now they cannot define what a woman is, and they are mutilating children left and right so long as a 7 or 8-year-old can make a decision to cut off their penis or have a mastectomy. Male and female issues are a big thing. Folks, it's not a political issue. That's a moral issue. What about transgenderism and sexual mutilation of children, as we just said a minute ago? This is clearly a moral issue for most people. And when I say most people, I'm talking about people that may not even be Christians. They totally understand. What we are undergoing at the moment is a tyranny of the minority. The minority is forcing a tyranny on the majority. I got news for you folks. The majority of you out there believe that transgenderism and sexual mutilation of children is wrong. I know you know that. And again, this is clearly a moral issue for most people. Either we believe that boys and girls are who they are, or they are nothing more than mini science experiments whereby we chop them up and let them deal with the consequences years later. But in the moment, you feel good because you've affirmed their momentary belief about something that 10 minutes later could be something completely different. But yet, they have to live with the lifelong consequences of having their penises cut off or their breasts removed. We heard a few years ago the suicide rate among younger people would be drastically increase if we did not allow these gender-affirming surgeries. The latest data suggests it's going up. But the transgender advocates said that if we would let 8-year-old boys chop off their penises and 10-year-old girls have mastectomies, that the suicide rates would go down. They simply haven't, folks. In fact, once the weight of their life-altering decisions truly sets in, I contend that the suicide rate is going to go up even more than, unfortunately, it has already. But by then, it would be too little too late. How about capitalism? That's a big deal, right? Either you're a free market capitalist or you're one of these Bernie Sanders socialists out there. See, the idea of free markets and private property are spoken of quite positively in the Old and New Testaments, and specifically by Jesus Christ himself in the Gospels. The author Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations, credits his understanding of free market capitalism to the pages of the Scriptures. So you want to know why our politics is so divided today as never before? Because we're realizing the religious nature of both sides. We're starting to realize the religious natures on both sides. One side bows its knee to the one who grants us our rights and has exemplified freedom and liberty through the cross of Calvary, while the other side bows its knee to the state and pledges their fidelity to woke causes, wicked legislation, and absurd edicts. That is the wicked trinity of the left. Fidelity to woke causes, wicked legislation, and completely absurd edicts. For me, as both a Christian and a constitutional conservative, the political divide stems from our doctrinal and theological divisions. It matters not what one side thinks or the other. These are not amoral issues. These are theological and doctrinal issues. I recognize this. The other side either won't or refuses to acknowledge it. And folks, it is as clear as the nose on my face. I recognize this. The other side either won't or refuses to acknowledge it. When we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll be joined in studio by the Italian stallion himself, Joe Messina, and we'll be talking a little bit about back-to-school issues and how parents should conduct themselves in a school board meeting that will not undermine their cause. When we return here on your hometown station, take care. On Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station, this is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. We have in studio with us right now the Italian stallion, Joe Messina. Of course, he's on the Hart School Board here in Santa Clarita. He was Well, he's a bit of a lightning rod in his own right. Joe, say hi to the folks out there.
Yeah, I prefer to be called the Italian Mule.
The Italian Mule.
It is a mule.
Is that because you're giving money to the cartel?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
That's it,
okay.
right,
Well,
the mule. Sure.
exactly.
No, I've been on school board almost 14 years now.
14 years, and for some reason, you win every time
That's
you
'cause
run.
They hate me so much. I don't know. They don't realize that you're not supposed to check the box.
I think it's important for people to understand that as a school board member for 14 years, that you have always just said what you believe out loud, and you've let the chips fall where they may.
Yep.
And you just seem to get elected, and you get elected not with just a 1 or 2 point advantage.
Oh, no.
Usually it's much greater than that.
I think that you hear these school board members, and not just here in Santa Clarita, all over the place. If you listen to them speak, they're parsing their words, they're selecting them carefully, and I guess I wasn't a good student because I don't do that. I mean, I don't want to. George Carlin does this whole thing, and I'm not trying to insult anybody about PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that thing that he does?
I do. I remember the old bit.
Yeah, you talk about PTSD, guys. You need a college degree to understand what PTSD is. But when you say that somebody is shell shocked, you know what that means.
Yeah.
You know that you have to be a little careful around them. You don't want to. I had an uncle that had it. That's what the whole family called it, was shell shock. We knew if he dove under the table because of a loud noise, you didn't make fun of the man.
Well, you also don't want General George Patton to come and get angry with you.
But you know about it. So yeah. So anyway, it's a matter of just, I believe you put it out there, you say it. To your point, let the chips fall where they are. I'm not a hateful person, but I'm pretty black and white. I'm pretty black and white about stuff. I'm not willing to play any games.
Obviously racist. You're black and white.
Yeah.
So, well, I want to talk about the new school year. Obviously, we're about 2 weeks into it now,
Yep.
and what's new on the Hart School Board dais, and what's going on there?
Well, I tell you one of the things that we're doing like district wide this year, and we're getting all kinds of positive reviews on is at the junior high school level, there are no cell phones allowed to be on while the kids are in class and moving around and that kind of stuff. So what we're seeing there is the kids are now more interactive. They're talking. Oh my God, think about this. They're talking to each other, not texting each other. They're actually looking at each other in the face and having conversations. And contrast, what are you laughing? Oh, I know what you're laughing.
I'm looking at my
mind.
son, who's the board op right now.
But is now there's emotions are coming back into the picture. People are able to talk to each other, see each other, as opposed to I was on the Saugus High School campus last week, and I'm not putting those kids down, but there were groups sitting around just like they were when I went to high school, but there wasn't a word being spoken. Every one of them had their head down and I don't know if they were texting each other sitting next to them or texting someone across campus, but there was no interaction to speak of. The teachers are loving it. The vast majority of parents are loving it, on the junior high school campus. And the reports that you've seen worldwide, these smartphones are not helping these kids. So we decided to take that role and
So smartphones are not so smart.
no, they're actually dumbing us down.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not really doing it. When you type in, give me the width of the Mississippi River, there's no looking up. You see it, you read it, you put it on the paper, you move on to the next thing. You're not researching anything. You're not retaining anything. There's no reason to. I can look it up faster than I can write it down.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. I know the schools again. We got all new books last year. That the teachers are settling in with the books and what have you with the curriculum books. Classes are full. The district or the school year has started off relatively smoothly, except with that massive hurricane that we had the other day. But
yeah, it definitely came blowing in on Sunday, no doubt about it.
I grew up in Boston, where we actually, we had nor'easters, which is equivalent to a hurricane. So,
well, let me ask you this, Joe. We've already been in the school year now for a couple of weeks, and there's been at least 1 or 2 meetings with the school district, and I'm wondering how those are going. And talk a little bit about not being or creating a viral moment on YouTube as a parent trying to come in there and say their piece, which of course you would advocate for and I would advocate for, but at the same time undermine everything they believe and say by their actions. Talk a little bit about civility and decorum when addressing these issues.
So let me just put a preface on this whole thing where now I've been on the school board for 14 years, and you alluded to the fact that I was a lightning rod, and I have been. I'll admit to that, and will continue to be so. And so all those years, I've had people come beat me up, call me all kinds of names. I mean, verbally beat me up, obviously, call me all kinds of names. When the Katie Hill thing went down, they came in. I had to resign and turn myself into the police because I put out all that revenge porn. And when the judge said, no, he did none of the sort, goodbye, see you later. I didn't see any of those people show up, by the way, to apologize to me for doing that, but that's beside the point. So when you look across the country and you see what's happening, you're seeing the parents are getting upset. And we're talking about their kids, not like you scratched their car. We're talking about their kids here. And I can see them getting emotional. And I personally, I'm not going to speak for the other board members. I don't care what you say to me. I know what's going on and I get it. And sometimes it's out of hate and sometimes it's out of emotion. Take your 2 minutes, let me have it or let us have it or whatever and move on. But that doesn't make it okay for somebody else to get in that person's face for getting on me or for me getting in that person's face later on. We don't need that. And here at the Hart District and other districts, we've seen it in some of the other school districts too. It's heated up. The temperature's risen again. People feel like they're being personally attacked. And the reality is I don't see that. And maybe I'm that ignorant, but I don't see it. I think that parents get up there, they speak to an issue. Maybe there's a parent or two or three that see things differently and all of a sudden they become enemies, which is really asinine. Mm-hmm. You're not enemies because you have two different viewpoints on an issue. You become enemies. You were talking about it earlier. When you start pushing somebody else's child in a direction that the parents don't want that child to go in, that's when you should become an enemy, because now you're taking my parental rights away. You're trying to get into my child's space and tell him or her what they need to do, what they should be doing, how they can pursue what they want to be. Mm-hmm. That's wrong. And it's wrong for the school district to do that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, and especially the board, when you hear about Gavin Newsom and the Attorney General for our state, Rob Bonta, attempting to sue the Temecula School District for making some decisions that, to me and you, would be common sense decisions about informing parents about decisions their kids have made on campus. Yeah. Do you think this thing has teeth, and do you think this is an idle threat to really just kind of shut up all the school boards and the parents in general?
Well, I'm going to tee off over half the community here. Here's the problem. The Democrats run this state. Period. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have friends that have been elected up in Sacramento. You have some too. I've talked to these people. They know what they're passing is unconstitutional. They know it. They bank on the fact that we won't take them to court. They bank on the fact that we won't push back on them. Now they're trying to take the right of local school. I want you to think about something. As much as some of you hate this, my district voted me in, that's right, Joe Messina, to represent them. They did not vote Mr. Smith up in Sacramento in so that he could come down here and take over my seat or this district and speak on us, because there's a difference between Santa Clarita, East LA, Sacramento, San Jose, whatever. Pick the different cities. We have different cultures. We have different values in these different cities. We should be allowed locally to make the decisions based on what our constituents want. And they're trying to take that away from us, which shows you they don't want. And by the way, just for the clarity, we're not a democracy. Can you guys stop that? We're a representative government, republic, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, they're trying to take away the people's will and what the people really want at a local level.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And, of course, not only is Rob Bonta and Gavin Newsom threatening Temecula, but I think they've been made some overtures to Chino Valley and a few others out there in the Inland Empire as well. But I know that, what does it feel like, Joe, to be kind of I know you're not the lone conservative on the school board, but one of few conservatives.
Usually on these issues, I'm usually the guy out front. You're right. So, when it comes to some of the stuff, parental rights, I'm 100% into it. I'm 100% into the fact, and I know that some people that are listening, here's the hypocrisy behind this. When it comes to transgenderism, right? Child shows up and says, I'm this now, and here's my name, and here's my gender, and you can't tell my parents, right? Well, that's wrong. And not for the mere fact that it would try to hide something or not hide something or what have you. This is a medical condition, right? It's called gender dysphoria for a reason. And parents need to know about this, how to deal with it. Now, the first thing I get from some of the, as you call them on the left, is, well, that kid will commit suicide, or that kid might be beaten at home, or that kid might be thrown out. You can't, first of all, that's just what do they call it, gaslighting?
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. Because loving parents, for the most part, will say, okay, I don't understand any of this. I don't know this. Let's go get some help. Let's see what is required here. If you really want to do your research instead of just following in line with whatever ideology you have, then do the research. Look at how many kids now are detransitioning. Look at the videos of these girls that are bawling their eyes out saying, Mom, Dad, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? I was depressed. Most of these kids are depressed, and that's what they're coming through. And when they talk about suicidal ideology, what do most teenage kids that are depressed, that have nothing to do with what are they thinking about? They're thinking about suicide.
Yeah.
How you make that leap of tying the suicide or suicidal thoughts to transgenderism, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how much dope you have to smoke to make that jump.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality behind it is get your kids the real help that they need, right? Go looking at research that goes against what you believe to be true, so you have a real feel for both sides of the issue. And I bring them, on my nightly show, I bring people on from all sides of the issue. But I think that school districts need to truly protect the children. Now, some of them will say, well, the kids might get hurt at home. Parents might this, that. Okay. We are mandated reporters, right?
Mm-hmm.
If a teacher really feels, a counselor really feels that child's in danger of being physically harmed at home, pick up the phone and call CPS. Don't put it on us, and don't put those, they'll commit suicide. Get them the help they need then. If you really love that child, you really care, get them the help they need.
Yeah, because that's obviously the argument that the left makes is the reason why we're trying to keep these kids from getting their information out to the parents is because obviously the parents are a bunch of fundamentalist Christians. That's the implication, at least. They're a bunch of fundamentalist Christians. They have backwards prehistoric thinking. They're a bunch of knuckle draggers, and they're going to discipline the kid in some way. And that's essentially their argument. And I didn't grow up around any fundamentalist knuckle draggers. I grew up around two parents that drank and smoked basically all their life and just had enough foresight to take me to a private school. But I don't even know what my dad would have done if I'd have come home and said, my name's not Jerry, it's Geraldine. As a redneck who drank Bud Light and Coors and an occasional Pabst Blue Ribbon, I can imagine what he had done to me.
Look again, it's called gender dysphoria for a reason. And so as your dad or even myself, if one of my kids came home and did something like that, I'd say, let's go get you some help. Whether I agree with you or not, let's go find out what's really going on.
Yeah.
And, some kids, look at the times that we're in right now. A lot of these kids they're more confused about more things than their sexual thought process than they are anything else. They don't know where they stand, where they belong, what they should be doing. We've taught them that their future is non-existent because, the Earth's going to go in a ball of flames, or we're going to have remember when you and I were younger, I think you're a little older than I am, but anyway, when you and I were younger,
I've had some stuff done on my face.
We were taught to jump under the desk because we were constantly in fear of a nuclear attack.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, how much more scary does it get than that?
Yeah.
And so between quote unquote COVID and all these other things that the world's going to go up in a ball of flames, these kids are thoroughly confused. They don't know who to believe or what to believe.
When we come back on the show here, I want to talk about two more issues with Joe Messina, who's graciously come in to speak to us here on Politics in the Pulpit. I want to talk about the impending looming COVID mandates that seem to be kind of coming back, and just in time for the 2024 elections, of course. And I want to see what Joe and what the Hart School Board will do if that pressure seems to start to implode upon them. And then also I want to talk briefly also about a lady named Rebecca Hinman, who still has a Facebook post that says Hinman for Hart. And I don't understand why, considering she's not on the school board. So we want to talk a little bit about that and see what Joe will be able to say about it when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, this is Pastor Jerry Cook with your hometown station here on Politics in the Pulpit, talking to the Italian stallion Joe Messina with the Hart School District. He's got a weekly show every evening called the Joe Messina Show. I encourage you to give that a listen. I want to talk to Joe a little bit about a little bit more about decorum within the meetings for the school board. I was privy to a video that came out a week ago that showed a parent talking and screaming and saying a few things to the school board about why certain parents shouldn't come in and shouldn't be allowed to come in if they are, quote, a threat to the school board or a threat to the school or a threat to students. But then that same individual who said these things then turned around and threatened a parent that was sitting in the audience. How often does that kind of episodic event happen at the Hart School Boards, Joe?
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things. I'm not speaking for the whole board because it's just Joe sitting here. So I'm speaking for,
in my opinion, you are the whole board, Joe.
Yeah, well, pretty big. I can be close to. But what I'd say is a couple of things here. Is one, again, I'm going to go back to being of Italian heritage. We tend to be very passionate, very loud, and hands start moving in a whole 9 yards. So loud conversation has never bothered me. Passionate conversation has never bothered me. But to your point, we've seen this happen several times, and not with just any one person in particular. We've seen when that whole thing happened with the girls singing in the car. We saw a lot of the back and forth. Tensions were high. People were mad. Back during the blue line flag thing, tensions were high. People. So you see it happen probably more frequently than before. But I think part of it is because people are paying much more attention now than they ever did before. So, but as far as people getting in each other's faces, in each other's personal space, that's just dead wrong. And I don't care what side or no side of the aisle that you're on, it's wrong. And frankly, I'm just going to say it, especially those of us who are professing Christians, not that you back down from an issue or what have you, but for you to invoke fear in somebody else and or physically with your emotions threaten someone, I don't think that's right. And I think we need to be more aware of that. Yeah, fight for your rights, fight for your child's rights, make sure you have the information you need. But decorum, again, they're parents. They're upset. Doesn't give you a right to invade somebody else's space.
Real quick question, Joe. Would Rebecca Hinman be a benefit or a net negative to the school board if she were to win?
I have made a promise to my board members that I wouldn't take on any particular person, but here's what I will say to you. There have been those who have said things like that our sheriffs, our deputies, should be unarmed, ununiformed, and have some kind of social services degree of what kind. The fact that some people think that those books that we asked to be removed from the library, which showed sexual acts, that's wrong. We should leave them. We should allow them to stay in. I mean, I can go down a whole line of these things. I personally believe people with those kind of mindsets don't belong on a board. They don't belong in control of our children. And the fact that a lot of people with that kind of mindset also believe that parents shouldn't have a right to say or have a right to direct and guide what goes on in the school. Now, I'm not suggesting that parents sit down and draw up a curriculum. That's not what I mean. But there is a line. Mm-hmm. There is a line you don't cross. And again, I'm just going right back to the books. You've got pictures of and I know we've got some sensitive people listening, but of two guys having oral sex with each other. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if it's heterosexual, homosexual, whatever the terms are now. I don't even keep up with them because they don't really matter.
I'll tell you after the show.
Yeah, please. It's not right. They shouldn't be on there. This is not things we should be teaching in school.
Yeah.
We are 42nd in the country when it comes to math and science type of things. And yet the thing we're worried about is whether or not you know how to have oral sex.
Yeah.
That's just wrong, and it's crazy. And anybody who thinks that we should put the sexual stuff above everything else, my personal opinion, you're wrong. It's not the place to be.
Well, I agree with you, Joe. And whether we're talking about Rebecca or talking about anybody for that matter who would seek that seat behind the Hart School District, I do believe that they need to have some moral imperatives that definitely govern their lives more than what we're seeing today. Joe, real quick before we come off the air today, what's Messina's plans? Are we thinking about running again, or what's the plan for Joe?
I'm going to become supervisor. I figured that's the easiest way to do it. No.
I was just wondering if the current supervisor realizes that.
Let's see what happens. And again, it's, this year, frankly, when I saw who was running in and around town and honestly, who was running against me and how different our ideologies were, that's why I ran again, because nobody from my side of the aisle was stepping up to do anything. And I've worked too hard, and so have others. on that board and before me. We're not the ones that made the school district the way it is today. It's many people that came before me.
Yeah. Real quick, give you the last word, Joe. Give us a little plug on your radio show.
Oh, you're trying to get me killed, right? Every night here on this channel, 9 to midnight, it's the Joe Messina Show, and we deal with all kinds of topics. Everything from taxes to, sexual issues.
Oh, wow, that's exciting.
Isn't it?
Especially the sexual issues. I'm sure that'll be a brief conversation. Anyway, this is Pastor Cook saying thanks for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. Next week, we'll see who we have on the program. I'm not sure yet, but definitely check us out on Facebook as we promote the show. Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks, Joe, for stepping in, and we'll see you next week here on your hometown station.